Now that we've reviewed the requirements of subsection 2, paragraph A, there's also some things that we can do in order to help ensure that our property remains compliant with the CPTED assessment. In this respect, paragraph B states, by January 1, 2025, the owner or principal operator of that multifamily residential property must have a crime prevention through environmental design assessment that is no more than 3 years old, completed for the property, and that the owner or principal operator must remain in substantial compliance with the assessment for purposes of this paragraph. To help ensure that we're substantially implementing those measures and we're compliant moving forward in the future, one thing to consider is providing landscapers with oral and written instructions for trimming shrubbery and hedges according to specifications defined by the CPTED assessment. Ideally, these instructions should also be integrated into the scope of work for the landscaper's contract. Bear in mind, replacing or trimming tall shrubbery is a common measure recommended during CPTED assessments, and if that is the case in our situation, we want to ensure that once we've completed improvements, that we establish an understanding with our landscapers that all shrubbery is maintained in the future according to the assessment's guidelines. Similarly, landscapers should be directed to prune any trees near light poles and wall packs regularly to avoid obstruction, and any tree limbs that fall below 6 feet should also be trimmed to maintain clear sight lines. One of the principles of CPTED is called natural surveillance, which includes facilitating the ability of people to see clearly in all directions around them as they're moving through the property, and also limit opportunities for offender concealment. For this purpose, there's a guideline that's frequently used by Florida CPTED practitioners called the 2-foot, 6-foot rule. Under the 2-foot, 6-foot rule, all shrubbery should be 24 inches or lower in height, and all trees should have a canopy no lower than 6 feet from the ground. And if there's any vegetation that deviates from this guideline, it should be at least 30 feet away from any parking spaces, pedestrian walkways, and outdoor activity areas. And that's to ensure that we can provide people an opportunity to recognize a potential offender before it's too late. Next, conduct regular inspections of the property for damage, missing window screens, things like broken light fixtures, bent or damaged fencing, ground litter, and other similar types of issues. These types of conditions all contribute to criminal confidence and what's referred to as physical disorder. A disordered environmental appearance gives the impression that the community is vulnerable and that the community doesn't care about the environment that they live in. By contrast, a well-maintained property communicates to potential offenders that this community is cared for and thus reduces the level of criminal confidence. Maintain an organized record of improvements made in response to the CPTED assessment, including copies of any work orders, invoices and receipts, and vendor documents such as new camera plans and photometric drawings. In the event that a court case appears, our aim is to prove that we have substantially implemented the recommendations of the CPTED assessment. And this is important because of the way that the statute is written. It states, quote unquote, for purposes of establishing the presumption against liability, the burden of proof is on the owner or principal operator to demonstrate that the owner or principal operator has substantially implemented the security measures specified in subsection 2. For this reason, it's important that we document all improvements made in response to the CPTED assessment. So if a court case should appear in the future and we're requested for records, we can quickly respond with a complete record of improvements in order to demonstrate, item by item, that we have substantially implemented the measures that were recommended during the assessment. Plan for an updated CPTED assessment every 3 years as required by subsection 2, paragraph B. And last, ensure that all new employees complete proper crime deterrence and safety training within 60 days of hire and maintain records of their training in the event of future court challenge.